"If I share my cookie, will you stay?" asked the CEO's little girl to a poor single mom on the plane. The turbulence had barely begun when the turbulence inside Emily Carter's life had already reached its peak. The plane hummed softly, passengers settling into their seats, flight attendants closing overhead bins, and somewhere between the rhythm of the engines and the quiet chatter of travelers, a young woman with exhaustion in her eyes tried to hold her world together. Emily clutched her sleeping newborn protectively, her breath shaky as the weight of the past year pressed down on her like a storm cloud that refused to pass. She was a single mother, broke, abandoned by the man who had promised to love her forever, and now she was flying back to the only place she had left, a tiny hometown in North Carolina that held both painful memories and fragile hopes. But as she sat in the dimly lit airplane cabin, she had no idea that her life was moments away from colliding with someone who lived in a world completely opposite from hers. The hook tightened the moment a tiny, cheerful giggle rose from the seat beside her. Emily glanced over to see a little blonde girl, no more than 3 or 4, swinging her legs happily as she held a small box of cookies. Her bright blue eyes sparkled with innocence, her hair tied in playful pigtails, and her joy felt like sunlight breaking through Emily's gray sky. Just as Emily tried to smile back, the girl reached toward her with a half-bitten chocolate chip cookie, her dimples deepening. She offered it with pure sincerity, a gesture so simple, yet so disarming, that Emily felt her throat tighten. This was the first human kindness she had received in months. If you believe kindness and second chances can change someone's whole world, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts. Emily whispered a quiet thanks, her voice barely audible, careful not to wake her newborn son, Noah, swaddled peacefully against her chest. She couldn't remember the last time she had eaten anything warm. She had skipped breakfast, skipped lunch, and almost skipped buying this ticket until she reminded herself that running away from a broken life was sometimes the only way to move toward a new one. She had no money for snacks, not even for bottled water, and yet here was this small girl offering her comfort without hesitation. Emily blinked back tears she didn't want anyone to see. Moments later, a tall figure approached from down the aisle. A man in a tailored black suit, crisp white shirt, and polished shoes walked toward their row with quiet authority. His presence made passengers glance up, then quickly look away. His posture radiated power, confidence, and the unmistakable aura of someone who spent more time in boardrooms than in the real world. His jaw was sharp, his eyes focused, and his expression unreadable. As he reached the seat beside the child, Emily instantly understood, he was the girl's father. But what she didn't know was that he was also Daniel Hayes, a billionaire tech CEO known for reshaping companies, breaking records, and freezing emotions behind the glass walls of his corporate life. Emily had heard his name on the news, but she never imagined she would be sitting next to his daughter on a crowded commercial flight. It struck her as strange that a man like him wasn't flying private, but she didn't dare question it. Daniel glanced down at his daughter, noticing the cookie crumbs on her lap and the way she was leaning toward Emily. His stern face softened slightly at the sight, but then his eyes shifted to Emily, taking in her worn clothes, tired eyes, and the fragile bundle in her arms. For a second, his brows raised, maybe in curiosity, maybe in something else, but Emily immediately tensed, used to judgment from strangers. She braced herself for the disapproving look she had grown far too familiar with. But instead, Daniel simply nodded politely and took his seat. The plane soon rumbled down the runway, lifting into the sky, and the world outside the windows faded into clouds. Emily tried to relax, but her worries clung to her like vines. She wondered how she would afford diapers once she landed, where she would sleep tonight, how she would explain to her mother why she had returned with 2 children instead of 1. Her heartbeat quickened, and she closed her eyes to steady herself. She didn't notice Daniel occasionally glancing her way, not with judgment, but with a type of curiosity he rarely felt for strangers. Something about the young woman beside him seemed familiar. Not her face, but her expression. The look of someone carrying more than anyone her age should bear. As the flight settled, the the little girl, whose name Emily soon learned was Lily, continued to share her cookies, swinging her tiny legs and humming softly. She leaned closer to Emily at one point and pointed at baby Noah with fascination, gently touching his blanket before giggling. Emily whispered a gentle thanks again, but her voice trembled. She wasn't used to kindness, and it frightened her almost as much as it comforted her. Daniel observed the moment quietly, noticing the way Emily held her baby with protective grace, the way she brushed aside her fear to give Lily a warm smile. He couldn't help but wonder about her story. But he was a man who built empires, not conversations, so he simply remained silent, watching out of the corner of his eye, unexpectedly drawn to the quiet strength she carried. Near the middle of the flight, turbulence struck, shaking the plane enough for Noah to wake up crying. Emily's chest tightened with panic. She bounced him gently, whispering soothing sounds, but her nerves were frayed and her exhaustion overwhelming. The crying continued, drawing a few annoyed glances from passengers around them. She shrank back into her seat, sinking under invisible pressure. But Lily, instead of covering her ears or frowning like the others, did something Emily never expected. She climbed onto her knees, leaned toward Emily, and held her cookie up again, this time pressing it gently against the baby's blanket, as if offering comfort. Then she tilted her head, studying Emily with wide, hopeful eyes. "Stay," she whispered softly in her childish voice, though Emily understood the emotion behind it far more than the words. It was as if the little girl wasn't just asking her to stay on the plane, but asking her to stay in this moment of safety, of acceptance, of being seen. For the first time in months, Emily felt something fragile flicker inside her, something she thought she had lost forever. Hope. Daniel finally spoke then, his voice low, steady, surprisingly gentle. He leaned slightly toward Emily, offering his water bottle without saying much else. She hesitated, but when she saw the sincerity in his eyes, she accepted it with a grateful nod. She took a sip, feeling her throat loosen with relief. Daniel didn't pry, didn't judge, didn't ask questions. He just offered help quietly, in a way she hadn't expected from a man who looked carved from marble. As the hours passed, the odd trio in the row, powerful CEO, struggling single mom, and cookie-sharing toddler, settled into an unspoken bond. Emily shared stories in fragments, careful not to reveal too much, while Daniel listened more than she ever imagined a man like him would. Lily drifted off to sleep, hugging her box of cookies, her head resting on Daniel's arm. Gradually, Daniel learned enough to understand the fractures in Emily's life, a childhood marked by instability, a partner who walked out before the baby was born, a job she lost after complications during pregnancy, and a desperate sale of everything she owned to buy this one-way ticket home. Emily didn't dramatize anything. She spoke simply, quietly, as if she didn't want her struggles to inconvenience anyone. But something inside Daniel shifted. He hadn't felt compassion this strong in years. His own wife, Lily's mother, had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving him heartbroken, lonely, and buried in work as a way to cope. He raised Lily alone, with nannies and schedules and structured routines, but the warmth Emily gave to her children reminded him painfully of the love he once had in his life. It stirred emotions he had locked away. By the time the plane began its descent, Lily woke up, blinking in groggy confusion before looking at Emily again. She lifted her cookie box, offering the last remaining cookie with a sleepy smile. "If I share my cookie, will you stay?" she asked in her tiny voice, tugging at Emily's heart until it nearly broke. Emily swallowed hard. She knew Lily meant nothing more than wanting her to stay in the moment, but to Emily, the word struck deeper. She had spent months being pushed away by the world, feeling unwanted, unseen, unprotected. And here, a little girl she had known for less than 3 hours was asking her to stay, not go, not run, not disappear. Stay. Daniel watched the scene unfold, the softness in his eyes no longer hidden. He knew the question meant something different to him, too. Stay wasn't about the plane. It was about connection. The days following the flight wrapped around Emily like a soft blanket she wasn't used to. After months of feeling lost, unwanted, and invisible, she suddenly found herself surrounded by warmth she didn't expect. Her mother welcomed her gently, helping her settle Noah into the small guest room, getting to know her new grandson, and trying to understand the silent pain Emily carried behind her tired smile. Emily was grateful for the roof, for a hot meal, and for the quiet safety she hadn't felt in years. Yet every time her mind drifted to that flight, to Lily's tiny fingers wrapped around hers, to Daniel's steady voice, to the business card tucked in her pocket, her heart fluttered with something unfamiliar. Hope. Maybe too much of it. For 3 days, she didn't call him. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't want to seem like someone asking for handouts. Pride was a strange thing, it protected her, yet also trapped her. During the quiet nights when Noah slept, she sat on her mother's porch, listening to the wind through the trees, staring at Daniel's card under the porch light. She traced the numbers with her fingertip, wondering if he even meant what he said, wondering if she had imagined the softness in his voice, the look in his eyes when Lily hugged her goodbye. He was a billionaire, after all. People like him didn't cross paths twice with people like her. But she didn't know that miles away, Daniel Hayes sat in his penthouse office staring at his phone far more often than he admitted. He found himself glancing at Lily, now playing with her stuffed bunny on the floor, humming the same little tune she had hummed on the plane. Ever since they landed, Lily had said Emily's name almost every day, in small sentences, in bedtime whispers, in random moments while coloring on the kitchen table. Emily nice. Baby Noah sleepy. Cookie lady stay. Each time she mentioned her, Daniel felt something move inside his chest that he couldn't explain. He told himself it was because she was kind. Because she had calmed his daughter so effortlessly. Because she reminded him of the quiet warmth he once had in his life before everything shattered. But late at night, when the city lights flickered through the tall windows, Daniel finally admitted the truth he was trying to avoid: he wanted to see her again. On the 4th day, Emily finally dialed the number on the card, heart pounding, palms sweaty, unsure if she was making a mistake. The line rang only once before a familiar, deep voice answered, sounding almost startled, as if he had been waiting for this call far longer than he'd admit. Emily apologized immediately for calling, stumbling over her words, trying to sound composed. But Daniel, sitting forward in his office chair, felt his tense shoulders relax. Her voice, soft, gentle, soothing in a way he didn't know he needed, made something inside him settle. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for favors. She simply asked if he knew of any job openings anywhere near her hometown, something reasonable, something to help her rebuild. Daniel could have ended the call there by offering her a simple contact, giving her a phone number, saying goodbye politely. Instead, he did something entirely different. Something that surprised even him. He asked her to meet him. Not in a boardroom. Not in an office. But at a small family cafe in her town, a warm, quiet place where people talked softly and the world felt slower. Emily hesitated. Her instinct was to protect herself, to avoid the humiliation of sitting across from someone whose watch alone could buy her an entire year of groceries. But something in Daniel's tone, steady, patient, almost gentle, made her whisper yes. The next morning, Daniel arrived in North Carolina with Lily by his side. He didn't send a driver. He didn't bring assistants. He came as a man, not a CEO, stepping into a small-town cafe wearing a light sweater and jeans, looking more human, more real, than Emily ever expected. Lily spotted Emily before he did. She squealed, loudly, running across the room with the innocent joy only a child can carry. Emily barely had time to stand before Lily's tiny arms wrapped around her legs, hugging as if she'd been gone for years, not days. Emily knelt down, hugging her back, feeling her heart melt all over again. Daniel stopped in his tracks watching them. Emily stood slowly, brushing her hair behind her ear, suddenly self-conscious of her faded jacket and worn shoes. But Daniel saw none of that. He only saw the woman who had somehow brightened his daughter's world in a matter of hours, and, without realizing it, his own. They talked for nearly 2 hours. Emily shared her hopes, her fears, her desire to build a stable life for her children. Daniel listened quietly, absorbing every word with a sincerity she didn't expect from a man of his status. He asked about her skills, her interests, her dreams, questions no one had asked her in years. By the end of the meeting, Daniel did offer help, but not charity. He offered her a job. Not a glamorous one. Not a handout. But a genuine opportunity, a remote position working with customer engagement for one of his companies, something flexible, something manageable for a single mother with a newborn. Better pay than anything she'd ever had. Training included. A chance, a real one, to rebuild her life on her own 2 feet. Emily's eyes filled with tears she tried so hard to hold back. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the job title. It was respect. Daniel didn't see her as broken. He saw her as someone who deserved a chance. Lily tugged Emily's sleeve then, pulling her into a tiny hug again, as if sealing the promise between them. As the weeks passed, their lives intertwined in ways no one expected. Daniel visited again, then again. Each time with Lily. Each time staying a little longer. Emily's mother began leaving cookies out for him, insisting she was just being polite. Lily started calling Emily Cookie Lady and Noah Baby Noe. Daniel started smiling more, real smiles, the kind that reached his eyes. Emily began sleeping better, eating better, feeling like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. One evening, after putting Noah down in his crib, Emily stepped outside onto the porch and found Daniel standing there, hands in his pockets, watching the sunset over the trees. His expression was soft, different from the man she met on the plane. He turned toward her slowly, as if unsure whether to speak. Emily stood beside him, the warm breeze brushing her hair. For a moment, neither spoke. The silence felt safe, a kind of peace she didn't know she could have with someone. Finally, Daniel exhaled, almost a whisper. "It wasn't the job you gave me," Emily said softly, surprising him. "It was the dignity." Daniel looked at her then, his voice low. "You gave me something too, Emily." She swallowed. "What?" He held her gaze for a long, quiet moment before answering. "Hope." The word struck her deeply, because she knew how precious it was when you'd lived without it for too long. In that stillness, under the fading light, with Lily's laughter echoing from inside the house, something unspoken passed between them. Something gentle. Something real. Not romance, not yet, but a beginning. A seed planted quietly in 2 hearts that had been empty for far too long. Neither of them knew where this path would lead. But both knew one thing. It all started with a cookie. With a little girl's innocent question. With a moment of kindness that changed everything.